Joining us now, Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I also want to play some sound from Tom Homan. He's the White House border czar, and what he said to the Chicago mayor on Fox News this week.
So when you get pushback as you head into Chicago from people like Mayor Johnson, what's your message to the mayor?
Get out of the way, because we're going to do it. So if you don't want to help, get out of the way. We'll do it.
Will you, the governor, and the mayor be getting out of the way this week when they send immigration enforcement to your cities?
We will not be getting out of the way. We will be doing everything that we can to protect the people of Illinois and stand up for our neighbors. I mean, look, this is all about a manufactured chaos that the Trump administration is trying to bring to the city of Chicago and to a state like Illinois. They don't like the fact that we don't bow down to them. And as I have said time and time again, we are not going to roll out the red carpet for a wannabe dictator. You know, Homan talks about help. This is not helping anything. We have not asked for them to come. They have not coordinated with us. They have not reached out to us in any official capacity to give us any details about whatever plans. Chicago, Illinois, we have stood up together. We have spoken with a strong voice. We do not want them here. We do not need them here. There is no emergency. And so I don't know what kind of help he's talking about, but we will do everything we can to follow the law and protect our people.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us today. I do want to ask you, though, to those who say that the National Guard has positively impacted Washington, D.C. in terms of lowering the crime rate. You had someone like Mayor Muriel Bowser this week almost applaud Trump's surge of law enforcement for lowering crime in D.C., although she did also note that the presence of masked ICE agents and National Guard members is not working. But what do you say to those responses that this is helping the crime situation in some way? Is there any way to work with the National Guard?
Well, let me say a couple of things. The first is that we have a governor, a commander-in-chief over our National Guard here in Illinois. And I want to make that important distinction. Governor Pritzker has not requested this assistance as the commander-in-chief. The second thing that I will say is, no, I do not see it as helping, because this is an effort to try to normalize a military presence on American soil. And we cannot do that. This is a classic page out of the authoritarian playbook. To first of all say, oh, there's an emergency, and so we have to start snatching people off the streets, people who are masked, taking our neighbors off the streets, going into businesses and houses of worship, people who are living peacefully, putting them into unmarked cars. That cannot be normalized. But what also cannot be normalized is that when good people, decent people who are affected by what they're seeing and are heartbroken by what they're seeing start to protest peacefully, of course, then the Trump administration wants to say, oh, look, we have to come to the rescue and now federalize the National Guard and send troops against American citizens. The last time a president has federalized the National Guard was in 1965, when President Lyndon B. Johnson sent troops to protect protesters who were marching from Selma to Montgomery, and that was to protect their rights. That's not what this is. Donald Trump wants to federalize the National Guard to crush our rights. And this is not just the rise of authoritarianism. We are seeing it in action. And so, no, I will never normalize militarizing local law enforcement or the National Guard against American people. This is a power grab by a wannabe dictator, and we're not going to stand for it here in Illinois.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you for speaking with us. I know that you said that Governor Pritzker has not requested the National Guard, which is something a governor can do. But under Title X, the president can legally federalize the National Guard and send them to Chicago if he wants to. What exactly are you or the governor prepared to do in response to that? Could there be a lawsuit coming if the president does that? And how are you preparing your citizens?
Well, first of all, let me just say that, you know, when something is done with the pretense of we are coming to help, you would think that you would make some outreach. You would think that you would call the governor of the state. You would think that you would work with local law enforcement and our Illinois State Police and all of those who have been working on public safety throughout, for the state of Illinois forever. There's been none of that outreach, which is why it is so not just suspect, but it is clearly a ruse. They are not here to try to help. What we will do and what we are prepared to do is anything under our legal authority to make sure that we protect the people of Illinois. And we've been very clear on that. Earlier this week, we stood together with stakeholders from not just elected officials, but the business community, philanthropic community, faith community, and other community activists and leaders who stood strong to say this is not the way to address public safety, that if that's what they're really about, then we've been working on that here in Illinois, and we've seen real progress. We, of course, will consider working with our Attorney General, any legal action that could be taken. It's hard to plan that when you don't have any communication from the federal government, no official communication. So we will plan accordingly, and we are making sure that people know, number one, that they want to bait us. We make sure that if you want to raise your voices, and you have a First Amendment right to do so, you should do so peacefully, because violence will not do anything to help the people that are most at risk under these circumstances. So we want people to protest. If they see something, they should record it and make sure that we are capturing what's happening on the streets. And we want people to know their rights. And there are so many community organizations that are working to make sure that our communities know what their rights are in a situation where there's the militarization of the National Guard right here in the city of Chicago and Illinois.
Lieutenant Governor, NBC Chicago had a headline this week. Chicago Public Schools send letters to parents amid increased ICE activity. The letter acknowledged activity is, quote, creating anxiety and fear about safety at school, but plans are in place to keep children safe. One, what are you hearing from parents as they're sending their kids back to school as school starts up, and this possible increased ICE activity will be happening next week? And what are the plans to keep the children safe?
Well, as I've always said, we're going to follow the law. I mean, we have passed the Trust Act here in Illinois. It was passed on a bipartisan basis. It was signed into law by a Republican governor, previous governor. So we're going to follow the law in terms of no coordination from that standpoint. And what we've always said is that when there is somebody who is convicted of a violent crime, we've always said here in Illinois that we would work with our federal partners to make sure that that person who is a threat to public safety is removed from our state and indeed our country. We will always partner under those circumstances, but that's not what this is. We're talking about going to schools, and we have already made sure that there are some procedures in place to know that ICE agents put some limitations on coordinating with the schools, and the schools not needing to provide information about students. Again, if the focus is public safety, why would we be focusing on that? And I can tell you as a mom, I don't think any child should have to go to school, walk to school, seeing tanks or armed guards marching up and down our streets. Students should be able to go to school, know they are safe, know that they can get an education that they deserve, and feel safe in their own state. And so we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we're coordinating with all of the stakeholders and that our children and all of our residents are protected.
Lieutenant Governor, we're all out of time, unfortunately. Before you go, though, I do want to note violent crime rates in Chicago overall are all down, declining this year. That's homicides, overall shooting incidents, multi-victim incidents, robberies, vehicular hijackings, aggravated assault. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.